Mac wants the flamethrower. Mac wants the what? That's what he said. Now move! Damn it. Stay back. Mac, what is it?
Well, they don't know what it is, but it's big and it's hungry, and John Carpenter's new thriller, The Thing. That's one of 4 new movies we'll be reviewing this week on Sneak Previews. Across the aisle from me, Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune.
And this is Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times. Now, in addition to The Thing, we'll also be looking at less gruesome movies, including The Atomic Café, which is only about nuclear holocaust. Also, The Weavers, Wasn't That a Time, a documentary about the reunion of an important folk music group. And we'll also be taking a second look at the summer's big hit film, E.T. But first, Roger begins with an adventure film called Megaforce.
Well, this one is a real loser. Megaforce is one of the most confusing, pointless, and muddled thrillers I've seen in a long time. It's just an excuse for mindless stunts and chase scenes repeating each other over and over again. The movie stars Barry Bostwick as the leader of a group of mercenary commandos who are assigned to carry out a dangerous and pointless raid against an enemy outpost in the desert. But first, he gets involved in a really dumb love affair with Persis Kambata, a female warrior with romance on her mind.
That's the boss. Y'all want to meet that man? Love to. Commander Hunter, I presume. Call me Hunter.
Target sighted and closing.
Major Ben Buddha, I presume.
Call me Sarah. Commander, we have traveled halfway around the world to learn how our forces will interface with yours to help destroy Carrera. I hope your plan reflects greater precision than we have seen so far.
Well, there are reasons for everything that we do, Major. Zara, right?
And do they include leaving your guests to bake in the middle of the desert, greeted by cowboy, and be attacked by wild creatures?
Well, if it's a comfortable tour you're looking for, I have connections at Disneyland.
There they are in this life and death mission, and we get dialogue like women used to use in the movies 30 years ago. You're going to leave me to bake in the desert. She's supposed to be a warrior, but that's how she talks. You may remember her. That's Persis Kambata from the first Star Trek movie. I don't think very many people are going to remember her from this movie. But there is an attempt made to make this tired old plot look contemporary through a computerized display of battle plans.
There is a minor trail that we could conceivably move our equipment across. And as we come up the backside, we'll use our electrics and run silent, so therefore they can't hear us. And while they're distracted by the planes, we'll come off the mountain and punch a hole through their armor and meet the aircraft in the middle of the dry lake.
The raid itself uses computerized, missile-firing, jet-propelled motorcycles. I think there's a tactical problem involved in having the guns on the handlebars of the motorcycle so that you can only fire them in the direction that you're going, which means that in order to fight at all, you have to steer directly toward your enemy, and it's a little tough to fire while you're retreating. Anyway, Megaforce was directed by Hal Needham, a former Hollywood stuntman who specializes in making movies in which the characters are only an excuse for the chases and the stunts. He made Cannonball Run, a real dumb movie, a vacuum-headed, complete and total waste of time. Now here he is again with lots of explosions, lots of clouds of dust, dozens of motorcycles lined up and roaring across the desert, and the movie got me so involved that I was reduced to total and stunned apathy.
Well, I think I can think of another problem, too, and that is the character of Ace Hunter. We saw him there in the band.
That's a great, clever name, right?
We saw him with a bandana. This is Barry Bostwick, who's been terrific in the Rocky Horror Picture Show, also in Movie. He's a terrific song and dance man. But Ace Hunter, no. And the costume designer who puts him in a gold lame jumpsuit is, I think, a little bit off. This guy should be hunting for bargains in a supermarket or something. He is not Ace Hunter, the warrior. The movie wants to be a little silly and action-filled, and the director doesn't have a fix on it. They should have gone one way or another, either parody all kinds of things or go real full action.
These Hal Needham movies always seem to have the same. It's as if Needham just has to get through the first hour somehow so that in the second hour he can have his obligatory shot where he lines up all the vehicles that he can possibly rent, buy, or hire and runs them across the desert in a big line, and they all do some spectacular stunt, and it's... I've seen it. I've seen it, and I've seen it, and I've seen it. This movie was just absolutely repetitious as far as I was concerned.
Okay, let's step up a little bit in class. Our next film, The Atomic Café, is a documentary clip job, a compilation of mostly 50s visual material about the dawning of the nuclear age in America. The film begins with an interview with the pilot who flew the American warplane, the Enola Gay, that dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima. And from then on, the film takes us through TV broadcasts, Army training films, popular songs, man-on-the-street interviews, and the politicians' remarks, all on the role of the bomb in American history. For example, here's part of a televised 50s speech delivered by President Eisenhower.
The sunshine of your smile, we see a future in your eyes. You led on into victory. You are the one we idolize. I'm gonna give my vote to you.
I don't mean to say, and no one can say to you, that there are no dangers. Of course there are risks if we are not vigilant. But we do not have to be hysterical. We can be vigilant, we can be Americans. We can stand up and hold up our heads and say, America is the greatest force that God has ever allowed to exist on his footstool. As such, it is up to us to lead this world to a peaceful and secure existence. And I assure you, we can do it.
Ike, very comforting, the father figure, clearly. This movie doesn't have much more to say about the bomb other than show the awesome destruction it leaves in its wake, repeated shots of atomic tests. Rather, this is more sort of a time capsule kind of film, a document of how a society attempts to inform itself, comfort itself, that was that scene, certainly, and delude itself when presented with a new cataclysmic threat to its existence. Here's a children's educational film of the 50s on the subject of how to protect yourself in case of a nuclear blast.
Tony knows the bomb can explode any time of the year, day or night. Duck and cover. Attaboy, Tony. That flash means act fast. Sundays, holidays, vacation time, we must be ready every day, all the time, to do the right thing if the atomic bomb explodes. Duck and cover. That's the first thing to do. Duck and cover. First, you duck. And then you cover. You duck and cover tight. Duck and cover under the table. It's a bomb. Duck and cover. 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 Duck and cover yourself. Duck and cover. Duck and cover. Duck and cover.
He did what we all must learn to do. You and you and you and you, you and you and you and you, you and you and you and you, you and you and you and you. Duck and cover.
Remember what to do, friends. Now tell me right out loud. What are you supposed to do when you see the flash?
that's entertaining viewing, maybe a little sad. I think if a creature came to Earth and saw that a few thousand years from now, it's very sad. That's what Atomic Café is all about, though. Funny, weren't we foolish material. As movie making, it's not a particularly creative enterprise. It's more of a scrapbook, really, than a film, and yet at its core is the destruction implicit in a mushroom cloud. That feeling does not leave you right away after the movie is over. So I can recommend the Atomic Café as a curio, as a piece of Americana, and also as a reminder of the bomb's impact, but not as a particularly fine movie. What do you think?
Gene, I sometimes wonder if people who grew up as we did under the proverbial shadow of that mushroom cloud maybe were different from other generations, because I can remember being in the 2nd and 3rd grade.
We did that.
And the nun in the Catholic school would blow the police whistle, and we would all hide underneath our desks. This was part of daily life. The bomb could drop at any moment, and that kind of fatalism, it seems, permeated us at a very young age.
Well, it's, you know, the subject of the time, and that's why we, a week ago, we did a documentary on one woman's effort to ban nuclear weapons and nuclear energy in particular. This film is, again, though, I think I look at it as Americana, and I admire the person who assembled it all. I think that they don't have a particular attitude other than saying we're all going to get blown away and we were silly back then. And but beyond that, I guess I'm looking a little more of an attitude, oddly enough, in a documentary.
A lot of the footage is very pathetic, it seems to me, because the difference between what would happen when a bomb fell and those kids crawling under their beds is just such an enormous gulf that all you can really do is shake your head and shrug. And let's go on to another documentary. This one is one of the best documentaries I've seen in a long time, a movie that combines great music with recent history and a lot of genuine heartwarming sentiment. And the movie's called The Weavers, Wasn't That a Time? It's about the legendary folk song group named The Weavers, a group that included Pete Seeger as its most famous member. The Weavers were one of the most popular quartets of the late 40s and early 50s. They had hit records like Goodnight Irene and Kisses Sweeter Than Wine. They started out with a liberal political slant, but in this scene from the documentary, they made a hit record and gotten into the big time.
All of a sudden, the Weavers were thrown into a completely different world. And it was very startling and very strange, because one would begin working vaudeville houses, or working in nightclubs, or television.
Tena 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 haben auf Purena Chayalim b'machshava. Alna 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 ich yabena mi ben Chai yelishtabah. Tena tena haben auf Purena Chayalim b'machshava. Alna 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 ich yabena mi ben Chai yelishtabah. Tena tena haben auf Purena Chayalim b'machshava.
Would you look at that?
Well, the Weavers survived television shows like that and a lot of other things, but they hit their greatest popularity right before their downfall. They were among the entertainers hit with the blacklist of the McCarthy period, and charged with being communists, they couldn't get club dates, make TV appearances, or have their records played on the radio. They were blacklisted, but their music remained popular in many best-selling albums. And in 1980, Lee Hayes, the bass singer of the original group, convinced the others to hold a reunion at Carnegie Hall. Hayes himself was ill with diabetes. His legs had been amputated, but he sure could still sing.
If Pete hadn't called us together, I was fixing to retire to the old folks' home in Washington, but it was just taken. We have a thought for the year. We've been around long enough to tell you, be of good cheer. This, too, will pass. I've had kidney stones, and I know. We can tell you, as a matter of fact, it has often been said by me, that the future ain't what it used to be, and what's more, it never was.
is all spent. My get up and go has gone up and went. But in spite of it all, I'm able to grin and think of the places my get up has been.
Old age is golden, so I've heard it said. But sometimes I wonder as I crawl into bed with my teeth in the cup and my wig in a drawer, and I hope my glass eye doesn't roll on the floor. As sleep dims my vision, I say to myself, is there anything more I should put on the shelf? First Carter, now Reagan, I surely am vexed, but I'll still stick around to see what happens next. How do I know my youth is all spent? My get up and go has got up and went. But in spite of it all, I'm able to grin and think of the places my get up has been.
That's kind of a humorous moment. Later in the concert, a few tears might fall when you see it, because what you're struck with is these people have been together for 25 or 30 years. They represent a period not only of our history, but of their own lives that's different than it'll ever be again, and it's really very moving. Wasn't That a Time is a remarkable documentary. I guess there's several reasons. First, because of the music. There must be all or parts of 20 different Weaver songs on the soundtrack. Second, because of the history, as popular music and McCarthyism meet head-on in this film. Third, and probably most important, because of the people. In a way that's rare in music and concert documentaries, you really get to know these four people. We meet Lee Hayes first on his farm in upstate New York. He calls the others together for a picnic and a rehearsal for this reunion. We see Fred Hellerman, Ronnie Gilbert, Pete Seeger. By the time the movie's over, we feel like we attended this reunion ourselves.
Well, I think this is the special nature of the film which really lifts it, and that is the people here. As I watched even just that last sequence, I was sitting here thinking, what models for living a life? They didn't forsake their art. They remained true to it. They got together, and if they couldn't do what they did before, they did something very special, which show how a life can be led. I think they each must be very proud of themselves. Everyone who has worked with them can see it, and I think that's what this film is. In addition to it, again, a curio, separating it from the last film, and also certainly a piece of Americana and history through the McCarthy stuff. These are lives that are exemplary in their, as artists. It's remarkable.
I can't add to that. I'll just talk a little bit about the music. The soundtrack of this movie is so much fun to listen to. You go to so many concert films these days that some of them are good, some of them are bad. Few of them can have music that has so much life and so much joy in it. I know there are a lot of younger people who maybe haven't heard of the Weavers or don't know that the Weavers are the people who made those songs that they've heard on the radio.
Or influenced Peter, Paul, and Mary, you know, in the Kingston Trio. That's where all those groups got started from. This was the original.
It's a great film.
Okay. Our next film, The Thing, has already caused a lot of talk before it has opened. About 2 weeks ago, something very unusual happened to me. I began getting postcards at my newspaper office from readers telling me that John Carpenter's new movie, I guess they'd seen it in a preview, was one of the most disgusting films ever made. Well, those postcard writers certainly were right about one thing. The movie The Thing does contain a lot of repellent special effects, telling the story of a creature that is discovered in the Antarctic by a team of American scientists. Here, the scientists expect the damage that the mysterious thing did at another scientific installation.
We found this.
Blair, I'd like you to start an autopsy right away.
The Thing is based on the same book that was used in a 1952 movie, also called The Thing, and there is a similarity between the two films, with both having the subtext of a Cold War mentality, suspicion of strangers. This part of The Thing is not disgusting at all, I think. Actually, it's quite intriguing, especially in this scene where the scientists begin to doubt each other, wondering who among them has been infected by the Thing, which turns you into a monster that looks exactly like yourself.
I know I'm human. And if you were all these things, then you'd just attack me right now. So some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to. But it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won. There's a storm hitting us in 6 hours. We're gonna find out who's who. All right, Doc, Gary and Clark, move over there away from the others. Norris, you and Childs, shoot him up with morphine. Tie him down in the rec room and watch him. Fuchs, you start working on a new tech.
I need Doc's help. Yeah, you don't want to drug me. Mac, I'm not a prisoner.
Later, there's a terrific blood test where they try and check out who is human, who is not. I wish this movie were less ugly than it is, because in terms of storytelling and suspense, and that subtext of suspicion of one's fellow man, this is actually a very well-made movie. But at regular intervals, no doubt about it, it does gross one out. So, a mixed review for the thing from me. I'm going to recommend it, but serve notice that a lot of people who see it will be made sick by it.
I think that's probably an understatement. I would call this the barf bag movie of July. I have some problems with it. One of them is, I think, the characters. They're not made into three-dimensional people. Their function is to walk down the corridor and be jumped on. The other thing is plausibility. Once they figure out that this thing can turn into one of them, they ought to institute a watertight buddy system, but instead they have all kinds of loopholes. People walk out into the snow, come back with a grin on their face, so that the story is totally implausible, and the movie just basically is an excuse for this very gruesome and repellent creature to gross us out. It is the most nauseating thing I've ever seen on a movie screen, I think.
That's quite a statement.
I think I'll stand behind it.
I think that the movie for me, though, isn't about those characters as individual people. I think that's why they can be interchangeable. I think that it's about how a society, this little group here, wants to poison, they think something's going wrong, you're not in the group, you're out, move, just that line, move away to one side. It's a very chilling thing. And I think if you read the movie in that way, then the implausibilities at your level mean very little. And so you sit there wishing, and I do wish, that it were a lot cleaner.
Well, I think, Gene, though, that I've got news for you, and that is that 99% of the people who go to see this movie are there to see the monsters, and very few of them are going to read it as your kind of allegory of McCarthyism.
That we will see. Let's enough go on the thing, and we'll move on to the point now in the show where we normally identify the dogs of the week, the week's worst movies. But something different this week in honor of what is proving to be a record summer at the box office. Roger and I thought it might be interesting to take a second look at the most successful movie of the summer season, Steven Spielberg's E.T. Let's take a look at that.
Okay, well, E.T. may or may not surpass the all-time box office record set back in 1977 by Star Wars, but it does seem to be appealing to a wider range of age groups, not only kids, teenagers, and college students, but also adults and grandparents and even hardened newspaper men who walk in with a cynical attitude and walk out blowing their noses and dabbing at their eyes. And what makes E.T. such a universal popular movie? I think it's a combination of two things. First of all, the sense of wonder that science fiction fans talk about, the awesome wonder we feel in the presence of great imaginary experiences like the possibility of visitors from outer space. But E.T. isn't just a science fiction movie. The second of the movie's two magic ingredients is drawn from another popular Hollywood category, and I think you could call it the boy and his dog movie. Those are the movies where a likable kid and his likable pet get involved in a risky situation which threatens not only their love for each other, but also their very lives. For example, Elizabeth Taylor and her horse in National Velvet. But you stop to think about it, Elliot and E.T. in this movie have about the same relationship. E.T. may be a member of an awesomely intelligent race from outer space, but he's also a confused little creature who needs all the help he can get from a smart human kid.
I also think the film's appeal grows out of the fact that we see idealized behavior. Adults, when confronted with something strange from another planet or from this planet, are defensive, either paranoid or totally aggressive.
They react like the people in the thing.
And in this movie, we see a young boy who, just because something is different, doesn't react negatively. And that is very appealing to see. And it's proving to be a tremendous hit. So much for E.T. Now to recap our reactions to the main movies on the show. Roger and I didn't like Megaforce, the soldier of fortune adventure comedy, a meandering plot and a wimpy leader. 2 no votes for that. 2 yes votes, though, for the Atomic Café, a documentary on America's reaction in the 50s to the birth of the nuclear age. We both found the film to be a better curio than a piece of movie making, but an entertaining curio nonetheless, so 2 yes votes for that. Our strongest support, however, was for The Weavers. Wasn't That a Time? A very special documentary of the recent reunion of the popular 50s folk song group. We both loved that picture. And we split on The Thing. Roger, as you can remember, was appalled by the monsters in the film. He calls it a geek show. I didn't enjoy looking at the monsters either, but I did find it to be an interesting element in the movie, the element of suspicion of something rotten in one's fellow man. So a reluctant, but yes vote for mine.
Well, that's all for this week. Join us next time when we'll take a look at Tron, Disney's new animated fantasy about a young man who enters the world of a video game. And Midsummer Night's sex comedy, Woody Allen's new film. Until then, we'll see you at the movies.
Funding for sneak previews was provided by this station and by other public television stations.